My name is Sally, and from approximately the age of 3 until I was 12, my grandfather sexually abused me. In my family, one set of grandparents had favorites, and my grandfather chose me as his favorite. I was a middle child, and he had been a middle child, and so I needed extra attention as far as he was concerned, and I was the favorite. He nicknamed me Boo Boo, and for a long time I believed that was because I was an unplanned pregnancy and kind of a mistake. Part of that attention led to sexual abuse. Spending extra time tucking me in. It was very subtle. The doors weren't closed. I was rarely isolated, but very definitely sexually abused. It kind of had always been there, the whole checking in at night and that lingering time. And at some point it became uncomfortable. I remember enjoying everything about my relationship with my grandfather except that, and dreading that. We were coming home in the car, and I remember being very specific with what was happening when he tucked me in at night. And the response from my family was devastating. You know, I knew that I was wrong, it was bad, it was awful, and I didn't ever bring it up again. I knew that if I brought it up again, he would be in trouble, I would be in trouble. I wouldn't have a place in the family anymore. And so I never talked about it again. I just thought, you know, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I can endure being tucked in at night, it's okay. On one occasion when I was 12, we took a teenage boy with us to my grandparents' home so that he could participate in an event in their city. And that particular visit, my grandfather didn't tuck me in. And he never tucked me in again. And that was the end of our relationship. The parts that I needed and the parts that I enjoyed ended as well. I was a teenager in the 70s, and it was not unacceptable. My parents knew that we partied. Boy-girl parties on the weekends became my new highlight. I discovered that I got the attention that I was missing from my grandfather through partying and the attention of boys. At 15, I had my first real boyfriend. My parents had been high school sweethearts, and so I just assumed this was it. I was going to marry this young man. At 19, I was pregnant, and thought, you know, how in the world can I possibly really be pregnant and be losing all of this weight? I started losing a lot of weight, and at 16 weeks pregnant, did the responsible thing and had an abortion. And the guilt and the shame of that, even though it was the responsible thing to do to keep my family picture perfect, it was devastating. It was more than I could handle. By 22, the next thing to do was get married to keep my perfect little family picture and be accepted in my family. And I found someone who was decent, that was a good person, and had a wedding. Got married at 22. Being married wasn't the solution. For me, alcohol and attention from men, being thin and attention from men and women filled the void of feeling invisible and nobody paying attention. So I ended up divorced, and at 26, I ended up marrying my boss. It was the perfect picture, or so I thought. He was an Olympic athlete, an MBA from Stanford. He had everything that gave me the sense of value and stability that I felt I was lacking. We ended up moving to Bend. By the time I was 30, I had a beautiful little girl and a healthy baby boy. We had a beautiful home and a business, and I had a nanny, and I traveled to markets, and my picture was perfect, or so I thought. The relationship problems or challenges that had plagued my husband the whole time that I had known him followed us to Bend. And before I knew it, our business was failing, and I was pregnant for the third time. Neither one of them were part of my plan or my perfect picture. And sitting in the middle of the night holding my third child, realizing that I had my very own boo-boo, I was completely desperate. And for whatever reason, I just felt like I wanted to start going to church. I had an encounter with Jesus and realized that he had seen everything I had done. He knew who I was. He had a plan for me all along. And I was forgiven. He had already paid the price for all of it. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. Probably will be the hardest thing I will ever do in my life. And I left my 3 children to go into treatment for the eating disorder so that I could get well and be their mom. During the time, the 6 weeks that I was away, one of my 3 children was violated. I ended up finding myself in the very same position that my mother had been in. And when my child told me, I really didn't know what to do. I believed her. Had she not told her teacher, and had her teacher not been brave enough to report it, and also brave enough to tell me that she had reported it, we would never have been referred to the Kids Center. My daughter's story is very different than my story because she was believed and she got help. And I think for me, having seen how she was cared for at the Kids Center, the way they cared for all of my children, I wonder what it would have been like for me if my mother had those kind of resources when I was little too.